And anybody else on the phone besides Candace? Everybody say hi to Candace. She's from Arvada.
Hi.
Hi, Candace.
Good afternoon.
A little bit about myself. Well, you know what? Is anybody forced to be here, or are you all here on your own wants, wills, desires? Is this something you're pursuing?
Well, I'm pursuing this, but we are also all
We're,
forced to
yeah,
be here.
we're pursuing it, but we're also required to.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Well, that's good to know. So,
You've been forced to voluntarily pursue it.
Well, we were voluntary and then it became a mandatory.
voluntold.
I
Yes.
have not
Okay.
been forced to do that.
Yes, Troy.
All right. Well, you know what? I have been doing these types of coaching sessions for, gosh, the 8 years that I was the director at Denver, and then 5 years prior to that when I was a director in Portland, Oregon. And I've probably coached easily 70 people through this process, and think of it as a process. Think of it as a project that you're undertaking. And also think of it as an elephant. You know, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite
One
at a
bite.
time.
One bite at a time. But I have probably worked with 70 people, taking people through these processes, and only one has not passed the test. So don't let me down. No pressure. And I mention it one bite at a time because you know GIS, so you don't have to study the GIS section of this, right? Hopefully. That's what we're counting on. And you know policy, so you're not going to have to spend a lot of time on policy development. And so everybody who's taking this ENP experience knows something that we in the training field can say you can, you know, put a hook to it. You already know this stuff. So stop studying that stuff and focus on the stuff that you have. So I brought with me 4 documents. The first one is labor law, very boring, quick read. Hopefully I haven't been too involved with labor law issues. The second one is the main reason that we're here, and that's employee selection and hiring. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I also brought with me some extra documents just in case we had extra time. One of them, and it has nothing to do with hiring, which is why we're here, but it's test-taking tips that I've used for a couple of years, and you just kind of read through it. It becomes your mantra, and it helps you understand better some of the stresses that you encounter because you'll get test anxiety and how to deal with that. And it's a pretty cool document. And whether or not we get to that to talk about it today, I will leave it with you so that you can review it later. And then I went through some pain, I went through some pressure, and I took the ENP exam online, a sample test, and I copied all of the questions and I gave you the right answers. So I think there's 50 test questions in there with 50 probably correct answers in them. Truth is they've all been checked for accuracy. So I'm going to give you a sample test so that you know what you're looking at or what you're looking for when you go and sit in that testing booth. I've taken the test 3 times, passed it every time. Mistake that I made was I let my certification lapse. So if you're doing something like this, a community presentation, man, make a note of it and put down how much time, because that will save you, what is it, $300 to take the test, $400?
I thought it was 500.
Yeah, maybe it is
Somewhere in there.
$500. But more than that, just the test anxiety of having to go through it again and take the test once again. So I let my certification slip twice, and so I'm not preaching to the choir, but I'm just telling you from my experiences. My background, I'm Carl Simpson. I started in dispatch in 1988. I won't ask when you were born, but I started as a dispatcher in Fort Collins, Colorado. Yeah, no fighting, no fighting. Could you sit between these two?
Yeah,
I'd appreciate it. You know, and I was going to school, and I started as a dispatcher in Fort Collins, and I thought, you know what, I'm doing this for a year, and I'm out. Because I was going to finish my degree. I was going to get out there. I was going to work for Arthur Anderson. I was going to move to New York City. I was going to be a stockbroker. They were going to give me a company car. I knew what I was going to wear. I knew what kind of briefcase I was going to buy. And the craziest thing happened is I fell in love with this work. Some people say it gets in your blood, and it absolutely got in my blood. So at Fort Collins, I was a trainer, CTO, went through the Kaminsky FTO school. I became the training coordinator, educator. I became a supervisor, and after 8 years, I moved to Longmont, where I was the manager there at Longmont 911 for 4 years. Took a break from the PSAP world. I worked for Tiburon as a project manager, and that was really cool to see 911 from another side, right? All the ones and the zeros and the projects and all the CAD systems that I installed along the West Coast. And then I came back and went to work for Intrado. And the data, again, the data is so incredibly important, the data that we use to do our jobs. That's going to be touched on in the test, so you might want to spend some time with him. Learn about how GIS really affects how we dispatch. It's key. So, got a little tired of not being in the PSAP. Hard to believe. I wanted to be back with the people, and I went on to become the director at Portland, Oregon 911. I was there for 5 years, and then moved to Denver, and I just recently resigned there after 8 years. I just finished my master's in Homeland Security, attending the Naval Postgraduate School, and I was tired. I was tired of studying, and I was tired of the work, and I was looking for something a little bit different. So right now, I'm doing some consulting work for the Department of Homeland Security, and looking at the 4 communication centers they have across the country, and looking at how they all do business. And one would think they have really strict rules about the rules of engagement, and from a communications center standpoint, they all do different. They all do business different, and that's my job, is to get them doing work similarly. So 20 plus years in business, and it's my pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you guys today and help you find your way through the ENP exam.
Great.
So that is me. Let's talk about hiring.
Okay. Which one do you want? You're gonna have to, these are actually not connected.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I was like, why are you looking at me?
Come on, Gerald.
We can raise that stand, so.
Absolutely, make it easier.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I'm with you now. All right.
It's a little ghetto,
Ain't nothing wrong with ghetto.
It's Greeley.
Oh, wow, boom. You live
Oh,
here?
man.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Sorry, being,
No.
being a Fort Collins guy, you know.
Yeah, there's a little
Rivalry.
rivalry,
Well,
thank
he's the
you.
#1 city in Colorado. There's no rivalry, really.
Who is?
Fort Collins.
Oh, okay, good. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving on to my document. So, I did live in Fort Collins for a little while. It's a cool town. So, what you're gonna see is not necessarily my content. I have taken pieces from APCO, pieces from NINA. I really hate it when someone reads to me from what's up on the board, so what I'd rather do is have a facilitated discussion so that it makes sense to you what they're looking for in the test. Keep in mind that if what you read is not how you do it, that doesn't make this wrong. The mission right now is to pass the test. And this is material that has been cheese graded against the test. So once you finish the test, forget this material, and go back to the way that you do business. And that's kind of weird, but that's how you pass the test. So, comm center turnover, what have you guys experienced? I know you're just brand new, what's your turnover rate? What do you think it's at right now?
The average or ours?
Yeah, both.
Ours? Do you
It's
want me to
definitely
guess?
shrinking right now. Now, it's been high with the change from, you know, the
Ownership.
management, basically changing over from city management to county management. So there was some turnover with that, but now that we're rolling, we don't have, you know, the exact number, but it's shrunk quite a bit.
So if somebody was going to be doing a consolidation, you would caution them to say, you're gonna have more turnover than you expect during
During this transition year.
during the transition, but then it might, and hopefully it will slow
Well,
down.
we were already a consolidated center, we
Yeah.
just changed management.
Management.
Is that what it was?
From Greeley over to Weld County.
I see.
And in that transition, it was a little messy because we weren't sure if Greeley was gonna split off or not. And they decided that the $4 million for a communication center was too much. And-
Gotcha.
Yeah, and because of that, there was some turnover.
A lot of turnover,
Yeah,
a lot.
that's hard. It's really hard on the center, you know, it's hard on the center management, it's hard on the supervisors, it's also really hard on the people that are there every day because, you know, they're the ones who get forced to be held over. They're the ones who are told to come in early, work on a day off, and I don't know. Sometimes I think we lose sight of that because we're so focused on filling the schedule that we really impede on our employees' regular lifestyles. You know, and I think that we're sensitive to it. It's just that's the way it is. That's part of this business. Hey, Candace. Good. I thought you. Oh, I thought you never leave. No. Hi. What's the turnover in Arvada?
I'm sorry, can you restate the question?
Sure. What's your turnover like in Arvada these days?
It's actually been very, very minimal. We have been fully staffed here, other than the newly created supervisor position that I took on. We were fully staffed here for about a little over a year.
What do you attribute that to?
You know, I'm not sure. That's obviously something that, you know, someone with a little more tenure here would probably better be able to answer.
Okay.
But, you know, I think there are little differences between Arvada and where I came from. So,
Where'd you come from?
Jefferson County Sheriff's Office.
Oh, okay. Well, they're getting ready to do some big stuff.
For sure.
So, I found this quote in Dispatch Monthly, and it says, "Dispatch turnover is a fact of life in this business. Some centers experience less turnover than others, a la Arvada, and then other turnover is quite high, as it was in Denver and as it is or was in Weld County. But even with all of the testing and the observation that is done before hiring most people, those people don't really understand what it's like and what they're getting into." And I finished this statement with, "Not all turnover is bad." Is that right or wrong?
Absolutely right.
I think it's right.
Yeah. There's some people that just aren't fit to be in this business. So can Candace see these documents?
She should be able to, but Candace, can you see the document that's up on the screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Good.
Good. Please don't spell out any spelling errors. So justify the need for the position. These are my thoughts. These are step one. You guys have been through this because of the consolidation that you've gone through. The very first thing you need to, from a financial position and a political standpoint, is that you have to justify the need for the position, and that is data. That's data driven. What kind of data would I need in order to justify additional positions?
Call volumes, call answering times, and radio traffic probably.
Yeah, call volume, radio traffic, exactly. Any other ideas? You know, I've been a director for 12 years, and I was never able to get more people based on that logic.
Really?
Yeah, it was really weird.
Okay.
But what did sell, at least it sold in Denver, was how long people held in the queue, in the recording. Thanks for calling Denver 911. Your calls are really important to us. We'll get to you just as soon as we can. We started talking about the duration of those recordings and the frequency of those recordings, and we put the liability on the politicians, and all of a sudden, we got people. They didn't care that we had more call volume. Yeah, you're right, you have more call volume. Yep, you're right, you have 20 more officers out in the street. And you know that impacts how we do business, right? Because they're gonna end up on my radio sometime.
Yep.
That is meaningless to a politician. Start talking about liability, start talking about the duration of how long, your answer, your average wait time to be answered, AWT. And you'll see that in the test. So that's really predictable. So data people, the guys that work in the back room with the telephones, they're your friends. They're the ones who can tell you how many calls you've gotten, how many calls you're processing, what's your average wait time, AWT, and then also average talk time. Hey, can I tell you something that we learned in Denver that was mind-blowing for us? We had a ACD. Do you have ACD here?
Used to.
Used to? So we had it in place. We really needed it. It was an automatic call distribution system. And 911 calls would come in on 911 trunks, and non-emergency calls would come in on regular trunks. And what we found was that the operators or call takers were able to push the button that says, do not disturb. It says not ready. And do not disturb is intended to be used for, let me wrap up this call in CAD, let me talk to my supervisor, let me do a little research on this call before I send it over to the dispatcher. Well, we just sat back in the call center and we watched what people were doing with their do not disturb button. They were getting up, going to lunch, they were getting up, going to the bathroom, nothing wrong with that. They were sitting there chatting with each other, they were doing the crossword puzzles. And they were monitoring their own call load, their own workload with the DNR. The do not disturb.
Clinically done.
Yes. Did a little bit of measurement with the guys in the back room. We found out that our employees, on average, were using 26% of their day in not ready. So 26% of an 8-hour day is how much? 2 hours.
Yeah. Sorry.
2 hours. Well, no, he's thinking about a meeting that he needs to go to. So that was 2 hours times 66 employees. We were losing the equivalent of 13 full-time people that were just reading the newspaper through the day. So I would have to have a lot of guts to go stand in front of city council or the finance guys and ask for more people when my do not disturb time was so high. So we got it down to, over a course of 4 years, we got it down to about 4%. And we gained the equivalent of 13 people. Our performance went way up, and we didn't add any people. Never disciplined anybody, didn't write anybody up. We just set the standard, this is where you need to be. This is where you are, need to see you here the next time we meet. And it was just personal, individual by individual accountability. So rather than going through all the hoops of going to city council and saying, hey, we got more call volume, we got more people on duty, we gotta make sure that our house is in order before we go ask for more people. So that, to me, that is one of the first steps that you would take in a recruiting process. So I mentioned call volume, call holding times, delay in dispatch, that's a good one. Why are the calls being held in dispatch? You guys measure that? The time to dispatch?
Yeah.
Probably break it down by priority, so a higher priority call, an emergency call, you would expect that it would be dispatched promptly, and a cold theft of something from an open garage a month ago, that's gonna wait. So you really count on the people that work in the back room or your phone vendor to help you find out what these numbers are. And then you need to find a way to get these numbers in front of your managers and your supervisors. And we even put them in front of our line level people on a weekly basis so that they knew we were watching. You can't manage something that you aren't monitoring. You know, you can sit in your conference room, you can say, dang, I wish that our radio time would improve, or I wish we'd not have such high wait times. Or, you know, we got to the point where we were answering 93% of our 911 calls on the first ring. And we celebrated that because we're $1 million or 1 million calls per year center. That was a huge number. So you really have to know what is your personal work environment, and can you stand with a straight face in front of somebody who's going to write you a check to get you more people. Again, it's about data and it's about processing time. When you are ready to go out and do some recruiting, or you think you're going to start working with politicians and say, hey, we need more people and this is why, another good area to compare yourself to is not just the increase in call volume or the increase in wait times, is to compare yourself to other centers in this community. And so I've been working with a consulting company that is doing work with DHS, and I've been reaching out to everybody in this community from Weld County all the way down to Pueblo, Grand Junction, out to Burlington. And people will share their data with you. And then you find the most relevant, the most closely relative agencies that match what you're doing. And you compare all of those stats that we've been talking about. You have an HR person here?
Do we have one?
Do we have one here in the center, or?
Yeah, HR person work here,
Or
or?
they have their own, they're separate?
So, do you know if they do exit interviews?
Yes. Is it mandatory? I don't know, I know they do them.
They'll offer it to the employee if they'll do it. Sometimes they're dreadfully painful to read, but sometimes you can really learn something from them. I've never read an exit interview that was, wow, Carl is the bomb, and I loved working for him, but I got just such a better offer, I decided to go someplace else. But we always learn something from exit interviews. So if you're not doing them, work with your HR folks and see that they get them. Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
You are?
I'm Tina.
Tina?
Mhm.
Were you the late one?
When?
Today?
Yes, and
Okay.
actually Jonathan is the later one.
Man, are you, you're not the firstborn in your family, are you?
I actually am.
Dang it, okay. Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I give you a link of a form that you can use for an exit interview. You'll have this in your documentation at the end of it. Some of the problems with exit interviews is that, yes, you're gathering data, but you have to have a thick skin. And man, some of that stuff is just brutal. But take the time to do it, and make sure you have a good bottle of something to refresh yourself while you're enjoying this. And then step 4 is do the math. Money talks, BS walks, and liability is the biggest reason for a politician to get you more people on board. So Another way to talk to politicians and HR people and those who can help get more people on board is to talk about turnover. Now, you guys are coming on the downhill slide on turnovers because people, I think, are getting used to the new paradigm. We didn't know what was going to happen. We're the managers of this organization. We're hoping for the best. We did pinky swears. We hoped, that we knew what we were talking about, and still a lot of people left. So that's tough, and that's just what we have to learn to expect. Turnover can be measured in a couple of different ways, and as a statistician, you can make these numbers work to your advantage. So it gives you both ways to measure your turnover. I'm not going to go through this, but I am going to stress that how you measure turnover could be on your test, and you should know how to do this. One of the easiest answers that I saw on the test was, how do you evaluate turnover? Well, you walk right over to whoever's doing all the onboarding at the accounting office and ask them how many W-2s they issued to your organization in a single year. So you don't even have to count names. All you need is the W-2s, the number of W-2s. And then count how many people left, and you'll be able to figure out what your turnover is. I did see this one on the test, how to count the W-2s.
Really?
Yeah. And then they'll ask you to pick a duration, January 1st through December 31st. That's the easiest way to do it. That's the easiest way to get W-2s anyway. And then I walk you through a model of 60 employees, and then what your turnover rate would be based on how many W-2s you get, how many people walk. But you also have to stress that some of that turnover is good. We separated, what's her name, for, being a mean girl. And then, not that that happens. And then we promoted somebody, and somebody went to work in the back room. So there's good turnover. And then there's also bad turnover, unexpected turnover. But focus on why people are leaving. What kind of a budget impact does turnover have? Talk about that.
It's quite a bit. Yeah, when you have to train somebody who's not on console, you're looking at, give or take, if it's an annual thing, for us, give or take $80,000.
Wow, how long is your training period?
What's that?
How long is your training period?
Well, that's what I mean, if it depends, but yeah, give or take a year for a training process that they're sitting with the trainer, because we have so many different pieces, different channels and different things that they have to certify in and all that jazz. Yeah, it takes about a year where they're not actually on console, or they have somebody off console training them one-on-one.
Because there's cost there too.
There is cost.
It's hidden cost. And then, because,
Classroom
and then you have to backfill that person sometimes who's not in the seat, not in the hot seat.
Right.
That was a total cat sneeze. I never even heard that. That was awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, you have to count that. You definitely do. As my team in Denver, as my leadership team matured, I mean, in the first few years it was, do we need more people? Should we hire them? And then, yes, let's hire them. And we got to the point where we were near fully staffed. We had 66 call takers and 46 dispatchers, and we finally got close. But then we got to the point where we became more astute in our hiring, and I would say, hey, cat's knees, I'm gonna spend $80,000 to hire somebody. Should we do it? It's a business decision, you make it. And then you look at your metrics, you look at your average wait time, you look at your average hold time, you start looking at your math, your dashboard, your metrics, and you make that decision, 80 grand. What kind of car would you buy for 80 grand?
Very nice one.
It's a nice car, right? So as our team matured, we got to have those kinds of discussions that, you know what, now's not a good time to hire. We don't need to hire one person. I'm gonna wait until we need 2 or 3 people so I can run them through an academy and minimize my maximize my trainer's efficiency, right? And then hopefully get some consistency from those folks that we are hiring. So do the math. Total cost per employee. And you will want to assess this part of the document, the cost of hiring people. I saw it in an ENP test recently. So think about it from a business perspective. It's not other people's magical 911 money, because we think about that a lot. Oh, what the heck? You know, we're ordering office supplies. That's really cool. I want that gas-powered shredder. That would be really awesome. But do we need it? Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby, we do. We gained 17 people virtually through performance management. That's all we did. We didn't hire anybody, we didn't fire anybody, we didn't beat anybody up, we didn't discipline anybody. We talked to you. We just said, here's your performance. That is the monetary gain, $312,000, by holding people accountable and making sure that they knew, not that we were watching them, but that we were watching them. And as you guys develop and as you guys are able to take advantage of your computer system, you'll want to have a data warehouse that replicates the data from LiveCAD. Maybe you have that. You know what I'm talking about?
We would need a CAD that supports that first.
What CAD do you have?
Spellman.
Can we have a moment of silence for you? So when you have a
I'm gonna have to edit
CAD,
that out before it goes online.
I know, right? I love Spillman CAD. So you would have a CAD that has a CAD, the capabilities of having a CAD warehouse. And then the CAD warehouse is the coolest thing because now you're pulling data from this system, this CAD data warehouse, and you're not doing anything that degrades the performance of your frontline CAD. And then all of a sudden, you get somebody who knows how to use crystal reports or something similar like that. And the next thing you know, you're creating reports every morning. You know which team's doing well. And not only which team's doing well, but which employee is not doing well. We were working towards our NAED accreditation. Now it's known as the International Emergency Medical.
IAED.
Yeah, that one. Edit that in, make me look smart, would you?
Sure.
So we were able to use our data warehouse and crystal reports, and we could not get to that accreditation. And we thought we needed more people. Again, that's what we're talking about. We thought we needed more people. Well, the smartest guy in the center, he was able to figure out, he broke down QA scores by category, and he was able to, and I hate to use this phrase because it scares the bejesus out of employees, but he was able to identify, rather than target, just significant areas where if this person would improve, say, section number 17 on their QA form, it would bring them into accreditation status. So rather than using the Elmer Fudd shotgun and shooting at everybody, everything, all the time, we brought out the James Bond sniper rifle, and we were able to say, hey, cat sneeze, you gotta improve in this area. And so we did that with all these individual people. What is your name? I'm sorry. Tina can't sneeze. So, I'm sorry, you told me that. So, we were able to identify and then work with these individuals with, you know, specific coaching that got them up into that realm. And again, we didn't need to hire new people to do that, because that'd be a waste of time. Because Tina does a great job most of the time, some of the time. And so, but now we're able to identify where we can improve her. So, more stats. One of the most effective things that you can do to help improve your morale, one of the most important things you can do to help keep people, is to let them know how they're doing. Do you have a plotter, a big computer plotter that does poster size papers? Yeah? What's your name? I'm sorry.
Mike.
Mike?
No, John Lunsford.
Do you know Mike?
I do, I've met him once.
Michael?
Yeah.
He prefers Michael.
Yes, because the big man is Mike.
But he was not in the military, though he looks like it.
Just the haircut.
I know. So those plotters are a manager's, supervisor's dream come true, because you can write up a letter of appreciation. You can write up a letter of how you're doing with your metrics, and you can post them around the center and leave them up there for a couple weeks and let people know how they're doing. So set it up in a PDF format and send it to whoever can print off your plotter.
What we're using right now is we have monitors in the room. So we set up PowerPoint, and then onto a thumb drive, and it rotates that information
That's really cool.
to on the monitors. We're trying to inform people, where they stand and where we're going as a center.
I want to see your center before I leave.
Okay.
Can you help me with that?
Sure thing.
Great. So that's exactly it. So this is just painful to look at. Anybody tell me what this is? This is the hiring process, step week by week. And it starts with 1, and it works all the way down to week 43. So in most organizations that really don't have their act together, it could take up to 43 weeks to get the ad posted, or for someone in HR to recognize we need people. And then 43 weeks later, this person has been hired, trained, put out on production, and they're actually answering the phones by themselves. That's almost a year. I got 2 weeks notice from the dude who left, and now I'm down 43 weeks. So I just put that together as an example. You won't see that on the test. I do it just for drama, dun dun dun, so that you get that it's it's more important to save somebody who's salvageable than to start over and work on hiring and bringing more people on board. I work with, as I said, DHS, and they have 4 communication centers across the country. One's in Denver, one's in Battle Creek, one's in Philadelphia, another one is in Washington, D.C. And their training period is considerably shorter than ours. But what is amazing is their ability to put people in the pipeline before they actually need to employ them. And so this doesn't always work, because if someone needs a job, they need it right away generally. But if you start working backwards, get somebody in the pipeline, at least get them through the application process, you have trimmed down that 43-week period of time. If you can cut 8 weeks out of that, that's huge. And so that, again, that affects morale, because the line level people see people coming in and replacing that mean chick who left. You gonna have to edit that?
What's that?
Probably. You probably better watch for that one.
Okay. I think it'll be 15 minutes long.
Yeah, by the time it's done. So, And then determine what your measures of success are. How fast you want to get people through. Do you really need 8-week classroom academy? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. With your geography in this center, yeah, you probably do. I bet that's a huge learning obstacle for a lot of people. You know, there's so much of it. These are my theories. These are my theories. You won't find them on the test. These are my pearls of wisdom. These I leave with you. I call them theorems, but I don't really know what theorems are. Number A is accept that you're going to have turnover. And anybody that says, when we get fully staffed, you really ought to have them committed, because other than Candace at Arvada, when we get really fully staffed, something's up, something's about ready to blow up, and we don't know what it is. Erase the phrase, when we get fully staffed, from your lexicon. Seriously, when we get fully staffed, how long do you maintain that status? And how do you measure it? Oh, you know what? 8 people started today. We're fully staffed. Yay, us. No, we're not fully staffed. We don't have any vacant positions, but I got 8 people now that I need to train. Except that it takes about a year to replace people. That's what kind of your experience. And start a recruitment process. You're already 6 months behind. Today you are 6 months behind in recruiting. You should feel a little nervous about that because of the 43 weeks. And when you finish a recruitment, you go out for a beer, you go out for a pizza. When you come back, start all over again. That's the only way you're going to get there. Section 2. Oh, okay. Any questions on that? That's just kind of like my blatherings of how to maintain a recruiting status as it applies to the ENP that you're all going to pass. Right? All right. So section 2, this is ENP's training content. I have to put this disclosure in here. This may or may not be the way that you do business. This is the way that it is on the test. So the person who's grading the test, it's a computer, when they're grading your test, I'm sorry, but they don't care how you do it here. They care how you answer the question. So it does not matter if this is how your agency does it. Nina is looking for the answer, not how you do it. Learn it here, apply it as a lesson if you can. Make this a takeaway for your agency if you can. Take the test, pass the test, and forget the material. Can I have a hoo-yah for that? Right on. So the process is higher, higher, higher. That's what we got to do. Most comm centers, you mentioned it yourself, Michael, that what turnover are you talking about? Here in Walton County or nationally. And again, depending on how you measure turnover, it's at least 17%. And it's probably higher than that, depending on how you measure it. Did the person make it out of training? Well, that's a milestone. Did they make it a year? That's a milestone. Did they get to be a director and get fired? That's a milestone. No, that never happened.
Doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. Thank you. So you have this whole process, and you'll get a copy of these documents after we leave. But these are the steps from the NINA test that could be on your test. And the really cool stuff is, you already know this. This is one of the, remember I talked about the hooks? Things that you already know. You know this stuff. It makes sense to you. So read through it one time, be done with it. Put it somewhere where you can find it, but read through it again. Let's see. Number 8. Why is 8 so important in this process? So number 8 is applicants passing interviews offered conditional job offer. Why is that one so important?
So you don't lose them.
You're right, you give them a chance to say, yes, I wanna come work there. But it also changes the dynamics and the types of questions that you can ask. Up until 8, I can't ask you, are you married? Do you have kids? Do you have adequate daycare? Do you have overnight daycare for this job? Because you're gonna have to work weekends during the night. Prior to that conditional job offer, I cannot ask you any of those questions. Anything that sounds weird, anything that has to deal with personal, none of that. You give them a conditional job offer, number 8, that changes everything. Because now you can ask them health questions, you can send them to, I hate the idea of a polygraph, but you can send them to a polygraph at this point, or psychological evaluation. You can get them a drug screen. Yeah, you guys wouldn't be here if you had a psychological, so.
Right.
Yeah, these guys were grandfathered in, weren't they?
We were.
Definitely. So, yeah, that's the key. And that is your point. Yeah, you bet. I've got you locked and loaded, Tina. I think I'm gonna hire you until I find out you're crazy. And then I can withdraw my conditional job offer at that point. So don't ask any of those religious questions, marital questions, childcare questions. None of that can come across in an interview or a document or interaction with that employee until what?
Conditional.
And then you got it. So work with your HR person. Say, I want to give this individual a conditional job offer, and these are the next steps that I want to take.
Can you ask any precursors to the background? Like, can you ask them, if you're offered a job, we're gonna be doing the background, is there anything we need to know about? Can you ask that question?
I think that's a perfectly cool question, yeah. Because I do that in the comm center, I'll walk up to an employee and just say, is there something you want to tell me? I mean, there's nothing, there's absolutely nothing they need to tell me about it.
They're willing.
Oh, hell yeah, they're working for me, and yeah, you're gonna learn some very interesting stuff. All right. That's step 8, that conditional job offer needs to be here and it will be on the test. Why it's so important and what you can do before and what questions you can ask afterwards. Any questions on that? Oh yeah, so I saw a question on an ENP test, and it was, what should recruitment of 911 personnel be? Well, number one, the question's asked really weird. It's a badly asked question, and it may have since been changed. But that question is oddly phrased. Read through it and see if you can find 4 answers of what you think you are seeking. Now, do you guys have the ENP manuals? Yeah, that's it. I think it's on page 135. It was at least on the last. I remembered that. That's from memory. I still got it. So these are the answers to that oddly phrased question, and you can find it on page 135. I have seen this question: who should be involved in the recruiting, selection, and hiring process? And that's a good question, because we as management, we're in management because we're smart. They hired us because we knew who could do this job. We proved ourselves that we could do this job. But guess what? The job has changed since you were promoted, yeah, well, that was a mistake anyway. But, I mean, the job has changed. And so I can't assume that I can use 1988 job knowledge, skills, experience to hire somebody in 2015. I have an enormous ego, but it's not that big that I think I can hire the right person for today's skills consider the technology, how it's changed. I mean, you might even have a CAD system with a backup CAD on it. You might, the CTO program's changed. The millennials have changed. Who's a millennial? Anybody, a millennial in here? My kid is, and she freaks me out. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. So, 911 personnel should be offered an active decision-making role in the recruitment. What about a consistency of a panel? If you had a panel hiring process, ideally who would be on that at Weld? Who's on? One person?
Are you talking about our interview, which panel?
Like you're hiring your dispatcher or call taker.
Supervisors.
Yeah.
It's all supervisors?
Yeah.
What about a dispatcher?
We have in the past.
Yeah.
Not currently.
Does it help or does it hurt? Does it get in the way? Does it?
Doesn't make any difference other than another insight.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt anything, I guess is what I should have said.
Yeah, definitely.
I am a jerk.
Doesn't make a difference.
Doesn't make a difference. They're just a dispatcher.
Can't take me anywhere.
Okay, another one. I have seen this following question on an ENP exam. How can this recruiting be done? And again, an oddly phrased question. What page is that one on?
135.
135. So, when you go in to take your exam, it's not like old school auditorium where you sit next to each other and test, you take one and hand them down. Do you know this stuff? You know how it works?
I've never cheated.
Okay, good. That wasn't the question, but that was post-8. That was a post-8 question, so we'll go with that. So when you go in to take your exam, you're not sitting in an auditorium. You go to a testing center. You hand them your ID. You have to leave your purse to the side. You have to leave your backpacks outside. They usher you into a little cubicle thing. And then you log on with the log on that they give you. And you have 2 hours to be in this. The best way to describe it is like old school library, college library, where you just have this booth thing that you sit in. And that's how you take your test. And you can answer yes, no, A, B, C, D, whatever. You can also flag it for later. And what it will do is put it in a queue. And when you're done with the 150, 200 questions that you take, it brings those back up for you to review them again. And you always want to flag it if you're not sure, because sometimes the answer that you're looking for that question is oddly worded or wormed into the test, and you can find the answer, or it'll inspire you to recall what the answer was. So there's a piece of paper there, there's a pencil there, and it's you in the test. Leave your purses in the car, leave your backpacks in the car, can't use your phone, and they do check your sleeves when you come in with a long jacket, so leave it alone. I only happen to know that because someone told me that. Again, another oddly phrased question. So look through this in page 135 in the book, and then also in the handout that Daryl will email later. So, hope you can read it. Which of the following can be used as acceptable recruiting criteria? And just tell me yes or no. Age?
No.
Everybody agree with that? Knowledge, skills, and abilities?
Yes.
Those are also known as KSAs. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. Yes, background. Whether or not misdemeanor convictions are okay. I would suggest that you consider this on a case-by-case basis. Conviction for the use of THC. Oh, you know what, 15 years ago, that's not that long ago. Let's say 15 days ago on 16th Street Mall is different than a conviction for shoplifting 3 months ago. So you want to weigh that. That is a management decision. You bring in your manager, you bring in your HR person, and that may or may not be a reason to disqualify somebody. Felony conviction, yes or no? I think the sheriff would be really irritated if we hired somebody with a felony conviction. So that's a no. Demonstrated use of computers, yes or no?
Yes.
That's a good thing. Customer service experience, I look for that. You know, when I was the director of Denver, and I had a really solid experience with somebody at Starbucks or UPS or something, and I would just ask them, are you looking for a job? Do you want to get off your feet? Do you want to do something different? I'd give them my card and get them on board. So find people that give good customer service, valid driver's license, yes or no? Is that required? Why would that be required?
Because they have to get to work somehow.
Okay. Oh, reliable, good, okay. Good credit history, does this matter?
You can.
It can, and we're, you know what, we're seeing it used more often and more often.
I think it depends on the level sometimes of the job you're applying for to, when you look at credit. You know, supervisor or managerial positions versus entry positions, I think maybe weigh that a little differently.
Yeah, definitely. And when in doubt with any one of these flags that pop up, you take it to Mike, and then you go to HR, or you leave the decision for him to make it. And the use of social media, man, this one's huge. This one's on fire. What do you guys search people's social media before you hire? What do you find? I'm just curious.
Find people we don't want to hire.
Yeah, right on.
And if it's public, you know, that's even more concern. And it's not just about kind of how they carry themselves, but it's how they carry themselves publicly. They always represent you, always, when they work for you.
I totally agree with you. And I don't have a Facebook account for that very reason. I never want my boss to have to come in and ask me about something that somebody put on a wall or posted on my Facebook account. Actually, my Facebook's page is Cat Sneeze 911. Last one, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Which of these can be used as acceptable selection criteria? Are these three required in order to be selected to enter the hiring phrase? Do they have to have these three things to be hired? END experience, industry knowledge, or extensive computer skills?
You can teach it.
Exactly right, we can teach them this. I'm looking for fit. I want someone who's got somewhat of a warped sense of humor, because we know what we're dealing with, and that they can fit in with people, and that they've demonstrated some level of customer experience, and they can learn. After that, you know what? Everything else, easy. Which of the following KSAs, what does that mean?
Knowledge, skills,
Knowledge.
And abilities.
skills, abilities. There you go.
Are you awake?
Just taking it in.
Oh, okay, good. Right on. So we are, which KSAs are necessary for employees to perform the function of the job? And these can be measured. Some of these can be measured by Critical. Do you guys use that application? How many tests do you use from Critical, do you know?
A lot of them.
Yeah. You know, for a long time, I didn't see people using MAP as a critical test.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought that was really weird, but.
It's so basic, and it's not specific to a region.
Are you the critical dude?
No.
Who is?
Well, I guess I'm the closest end to the critical dude.
Do you do anything with the data from the critical tests?
We're actually working on correlating that back to the success of the employee during our training.
Oh man, that is so cool. Yeah, I mean, this isn't gonna work out this way, John, but what would be really cool is if applicant takes test number 9, whatever that is, and everybody that passes 9 with a 95 or above is still with us, they're a trainer, they're tracking to be a supervisor, hell, we only need to give test 9.
We're just right now looking at their successive academy specifically. And there are things that are starting to stand out.
Oh, that is cool.
So,
That is very cool.
so it is really cool.
Man, I would like that data, but with the names redacted, is there any chance you could send it to me?
We can give you
Mike?
something pretty general.
Sense.
We're not very far in on it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to do that with the mega centers, with the Department of Homeland Security,
Yeah.
because one center is using 8 exams, another one's using 17 exams. There's no consistency. And what I'm trying to do is build a case that there is a correlation between scores in critical and ultimately the success of that individual on the job. Cool. Cognitive, physical, sensory, perceptual, interactive, and social skills, technical and mechanical. These are going to be on the test. What are some examples of technical and mechanical skills that an applicant would need to have in order to be able to accept the job and do well?
Typing.
There you go. Yep. And if you're using critical right, you can do keystrokes and words per hour, right? Words per minute. Testing material. This is a tricky question. Read through the responses. If you see one, tell me why. So which of the following can be used as acceptable testing criteria? Minimum education, yes or no?
Yes.
What are you looking for?
High school.
High school.
Or high school diploma.
Yeah, or GDE.
Yes.
I heard Eddie Murphy refer to it as a good enough diploma.
It works for me.
Yeah. You don't have to cut that out, because that's actually in the drug screen, yes or no?
It's fine.
Can you eliminate somebody because they tested positive or
Yes.
hot on a drug test?
Yes.
Background investigations?
Yes.
Absolutely. How many people do you lose in a background?
Lately, a lot.
It depends on whether I read them or not.
Right on. Fingerprint check, same. What's the minimum age requirement here? 18, okay, cool. Pre-employment screening examinations, including psychologicals, personality profiles, aptitude exams, and those tests that are generally conducted by licensed professionals. Nickelodeon Inflator, you guys use that? They're kind of cool, you know them.
Yeah, I know, actually, we've, was it last month? I presented a package to our Human Resources Department to try to get them on board under a contract
Oh, that's very cool.
with us, so.
Yeah. You know, the thing that I really like about them is we had an officer-involved shooting. It was Officer Hollis at a jazz festival, and it affected a lot of people. And we had a debriefing for not only the dispatchers, but the police officers. Nicoletta and Flutter were there within an hour and a half. And they just took over offices and they were there to help people. So they're top notch in my book just because they truly care about the people. And they're not gonna be successful in their jobs. Nor are you if you don't care about the people. Even Mike. How we doing on time, man?
Well, this is a 2-hour session, so you got another 50 minutes left.
Okay. One of the questions you may find in an ENP exam is how to conduct a structured interview. What is that? What is a structured interview?
It's the same questions for everybody.
That's a really good practice, you know. One of the things that where my wife works, just hours before they're going to do an interview, a new accountant or someone, there's this rash of emails that goes around that says, hey, does anybody have some good questions for an accountant? And that just freaks me out because they haven't thought it through, right? They don't know what the answers are. And so they have these sheets of paper with questions on them. Maybe somebody cut and pasted and put it all into one document. But there's been no validity to these questions. And so what we try to do, or what we do in Denver, is I talk like I still work there. I don't. I didn't die, I just don't work there anymore. You know how on a DOR you get a 1 through 5, maybe a 1 through 7? Am I talking lawyer lingo? We do the same thing with interview questions. So, tell me about a time you had a dispute with a coworker. What was it about? How was it resolved? And how is the situation today? I just asked you 4 questions, man. You better give me 4 responses, otherwise I'm gonna have to give you a 1 on my DOR-like questions, right? So, first point is, gave an example, didn't really wow us. 2, gave an example, explained how it came to a head. They get 3 points if they gave an example, explained how it came to a head, how it was resolved, and then they get 4 points if they tell us everything and how is the relationship today. So that's a structured interview question, and everybody gets the same interview questions. And then when we're done with the interview packet and we have all the scores that we need, we give them to HR. I don't want them in the house. That's just my practice. So think about adopting a DOR-like formula to your interview questions. Illegal and illegal interview questions. So I'm gonna call them out, and you tell me whether it's legal or illegal. Pre-8. This is just a very first interview. Have you been arrested for stealing?
Legal.
Illegal's right. Will overnight and weekend travel be a problem for you? Huh? That's illegal. Can you move up to 45 pounds around the office?
Legal.
Did you hear legal? Is your husband willing to relocate?
Not legal.
Not legal. The job requires fluency in Spanish. Are you fluent?
Legal.
Are you planning to take any maternity leave?
Not legal.
Not legal. Right? You're not, are you?
Amen.
Are you entitled to work in this country?
Legal.
What childcare arrangements have you made?
Not
Not
legal.
legal.
Not legal. What type of work does your spouse do?
Not legal.
Tell me about your health issues.
Not legal.
What's your marital status?
Not legal.
You're hot. If I hire you, will you go out with me?
Legal.
That's
You
legal.
saved
That's
that
why
one for
you're in
post-
trouble all the
Wait
time,
a
Robert.
minute. It's legal if it's a one-on-one interview. It's illegal if there's other people in the room. The job offer. What's the difference between a conditional job offer and a job offer? We talked about this. It's question number 8, further up in your handout. One of the best indicators that you will retain employees is whether or not the center is at full staffing. How could that be? What happens when your center's staffing is higher? Things are
Be
good.
more selective.
Well, yeah, you can be more selective. And I'm of the opinion, I'm old school, but I'm of the opinion that if you're at or near good staffing levels, your staffing stress is down. The workload is distributed more equally among the employees that are there. There's no forced overtime, minimal forced overtime. People can get days off that they want. So at that point, I would argue that it's easier to get people on board into your team and for them to be successful when your numbers are up. Factors that predict retention, page 142, it's in there. And it says the center staff's numbers of overtime hours are available, but it's on the downside. You know, you have to deal with job complexity, and so people need downtime from the work that they do. Think about the time when you, is anybody a dispatcher? Nobody is currently a dispatcher right now, right? Think about when you were a dispatcher. Think about all the different stresses that you had. You had to make sure that you were following policy. You had to make sure that you were getting along with other people in your room. You had to make sure that you were sending calls to the right units. You had to make sure you weren't making somebody out in the field irritated. You were trying your best to not irritate anybody else in the room. And then, the most ungodly stress of all in a comm center from a dispatcher's perspective can be management. So we as management it's our duty to reduce that stress to the degree that we can. That doesn't mean that if somebody's screwing up, that they get away with it. That's not what that means. But we as management, we should do everything that we can do to make the job easier, simpler, and filled with recognition and appreciation. But we're busy. Doesn't always happen. Other factors that help improve staffing, you know, employees are getting breaks, and higher pay equates to higher retention level. Doesn't mean you're paying the most out of, you know, on day one, but you can work your way up. You know, there's a really interesting pay structure is South Metro Fire. You come in low, I mean low, and then within a year, your salary's doubled. But they've had a chance to check you out. It's the longest job interview I've ever seen. But it's really smart because by the time you get to the end of a year, I know whether you're gonna fit in with the organization or not, and I'm gonna reward you for it. I just recently, remember I talked about reaching out to different agencies and asking for staffing numbers, starting pay. I asked Mike, got something right back from him. Put you guys in the graph, I can send it to you, show you where it is, where you guys fall down, or fall in the graph. But it's
That may be the case.
Yeah.
We tried to bring that up a little bit.
Benefits matter, for sure. What page are we on?
143.
Right on. I love that you're following along. Page 143, the total number of service and benefits available was significantly related to employee satisfaction, but not to retention. Isn't that weird? This will be on the test. Good benefits does not equal good retention. Good benefits relates to good morale. Am I the only one that's whacked on that, or it just seems kind of weird? Staffing is at authorized levels, but we limit the use of overtime. When I was in Portland, I've been there for a while, I was a brand new director, didn't know how to do any highfalutin director and type work. And there was this calendar in front of where you sign in. Just an open book calendar. You come in, you punch in with your code, and it takes you right to the timekeeping system, and you have arrived. You are on duty. And then there's this calendar with nothing in it other than people writing names and some blocks of time. It took me 6 months to figure out these guys, these employees, were writing their own overtime schedule. We didn't need them then. That's just when they were gonna come in.
Alrighty then.
Yeah, how easy is that?
Don't give these guys any ideas.
No,
Where's the calendar?
we took the calendar away. We were being questioned for our $1 million overtime spending. We took the calendar away and we actually held a manager accountable to, this is when I need these people to work. You can't just come in whenever you want to, that's the director's job. So we started to figuring out when people were supposed to be at work, having a supervisor do that work or having a manager do that work, and within the first year we were down $600,000 in overtime. So we were just doling it out, baby, it was amazing. A little bit of overtime's okay, way too much, you know you got a problem. Recruiting constantly and screen carefully to minimize turnover of employees. Employees want to see that you are actually doing something to improve the situation. Maybe we're not going to have somebody on deck tomorrow, but we're going to have somebody. Other retention strategies on page 143. Somehow you got to allow ownership to their job, and that really is a fine line. That is such a fine line because we, to use military comparison, that is, we have a mission, we know what it is. And for me, my mission is to help people on their worst day. That's me, that's what I want to do. And so I need to hold you accountable, and you accountable, and you accountable, and everybody who's training, and everybody who's supervising, everybody who's doing QA, are we helping people on their worst day? And if we're not meeting our mission. If we are meeting our mission, we are helping people on their worst day, that's when I allow people to come in and be part of the solution. Part of a solution that is not on my radar. You as a dispatcher might see that we're doing this goofy thing. We have been doing this goofy thing for a long time. You can come in and tell me we've been doing goofy stuff. That's fine. And I will listen to you. But if you don't have a solution for that, we're just going to have a conversation. If you come in with a solution to the goofy thing, then we're going to give it a try. So it's when you meet, this is my position, when you meet your mission, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you do it consistently, and you're good at it, that's when you invite other people like you to come in and fine-tune the operation. And that's ownership. Yeah, I could come up with a dozen examples of ones we used in Denver, but as a supervisor, as a manager, as a member of the leadership team, I'm talking to everybody in this room, right? Do you consider yourself part of the leadership team? You are. You are. If you make decisions for the organization, even GIS junk, you are part of the leadership team because you are helping the mission.
We try to keep him hidden with no windows.
And I can see why. I'm not challenging that decision at all. But your other job is to be that cheerleader, that advocate for you heard something. Man, I heard something that Cat Sneeze did that was so cool. I have just got to stop by and say to you one-on-one, man, that was the best Cat Sneeze I ever heard. It was awesome. Epic. And I want to thank you for that. That meant a lot to me because it allowed me to bond. I'm your cheerleader. So that's what we do. But we also have to call people on their areas when they don't do well and when they need training. It sounds like you guys are really training a lot right now. And that's cool. That's a sign of a healthy organization. Doesn't feel like it because it's painful, it's hard. Why are they getting this? This is so simple. makes a big difference. All right, I am going to leave these with you. Some of these will be on the test, not all of them. They also reference in the guide Canadian labor law. Don't even look at those. Here's the worst case scenario. Maybe one of them is in your test. 1 out of 200 questions, that's 0.5%. Let it go. Because the last thing you want to do is come back here with 100% and have to defend that. So let it go. Okay, keep it in perspective. So, Equal Pay Act, Civil Rights Act, age discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, ADA, older workers, Family Medical Leave Act, which we hate this one, Fair Labor Standards Act, Occupational Safety and Health, and the Panama Canal Act. I'm kidding, it's not really anything I've ever seen if you're still awake. So those are here, and as I said, skip it. Okay, anything Canadian. Hey. Hey, right? Dude, you're on it. So these are some of the questions that, the tests that I saw recently. And these are, okay, so here we go. Which of the following laws prohibit discrimination against individuals on the basis of psychological or mental impairment, which limits one or more major life functions?
One.
Who's got beady little eyes? All right, she's right. Yeah, Americans with disabilities. What is the single most important component of the emergency response system? CAD, human beings, consistent work schedule, or a well-structured command or communication center? B, the people. During which of the following is the employee behavior evaluated to determine the degree of the employee's effectiveness? Job analysis, work analysis, performance analysis, or a time and motion study? See? Good. Ergonomics in the workplace refers to which of the following? Brand of seating, study of workplace accidents, study of circadian rhythm, or the relationship of the employee to work environment? D is correct. When is the most effective time to communicate performance standards to an employee? After a salary increase, during a performance review, when the standard is introduced, and during a disciplinary discussion? See, why?
Because how can they know what they need to follow if they never been told?
See, you know this stuff. So take the stress out of this test. Take the stress out. Read it. I know it's easy for me to say.
You tell the right person to.
Yeah, all right. Test anxiety. You know this stuff. You worked your way through that question. Okay? You have hooks. You know. Which of the following is the most effective means of reducing bias in the performance evaluation process? Requirements of an evaluation by 3 supervisors, requirement of the traditional supervisor evaluation with a self-evaluation, require that all ratings be supported by regular documentation and observation of their performance, requirement that the evaluation be performed by the manager without personal knowledge of the employee being evaluated. C's right. Which class of worker is covered under the Fair Labor Standard Act? Exempt, non-exempt, classified, non-classified? B. B, do I have B? Darryl, what do you think?
That's correct.
B is correct. When a job analysis is performed, the best source of information about what is actually done on the job is the employee, the supervisors, the training officer, or the HR manager.
Employee,
Why?
because they're the one doing it.
Work it through. If a supervisor states Athletes make the best telecommunicators. Which of the following is occurring? Halo effect, personal bias, snap judgment, or negative influence? I heard personal bias, that's what I think it is. Again, these are tests from ENP questions, so you're getting exposed to what you will be seeing when it is you ever go take your test. What is the appropriate action if an employee makes harassing behavior by another employee, but asks that no action being taken? So the employee's saying, so-and-so's doing something to me, I don't want you to do anything about it. Question, or the answer is, you as a supervisor, take no action, make a full report, speak to the harassing employee about the problem without using names, give a refresher class to the entire department about harassment. What'd you say?
C.
C? Who else has a different answer?
Would it be
Maybe
B?
I think it's B. Because once you as a supervisor find out there's some weird stuff going on, you are now obligated to act on that, whether you want to or not, whether that person told you or not. Because guess what? You ever heard that phrase, no good deed goes unpunished? Yeah, I learned this firsthand. That's what that saying came from. That's the no good deed goes unpunished law. Tried to do the right thing, hey, I'll listen to you, you know what, that person gave me up, boom, like that. Guess who got in trouble? That'd be me. A study which defines the percentage of time spent on each duty can best be described as a job analysis, a job description, a performance appraisal, or an operational analysis.
A.
He's right. Which of the following is the first step in hiring the right person? Establishing commensurate pay, develop a valid testing process, determine whether the position is full-time or part-time, or conduct a job analysis.
First step?
That would be D. I think it's D. I think you can't hire anybody until you're certain that your job descriptions are up to date. So, if you're ready to hire, I mean, seriously, I joined an organization not that long ago where the word typewriter was still in the job description.
Wow.
No kidding. Okay, so here I am.
There's half these people are just saying, what the hell's a typewriter?
Yeah, really. I saw one of them on the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
So if you have a question, you want to discuss it, here's my contact information, and here's my telephone number. I'm much better at an email than I am at phone calls.
Can't send an email on typewriter though.
All right.
A wise guy.
He is a wise guy. All right, and this is a page that you can take out of the whole stack that you're gonna get. I'd like to see it laminated and at least on one refrigerator in this community of professionals. Except that you're gonna have turnover. Anybody tells you they don't have turnover, erase the phrase, when we get fully staffed, from your lexicon. Seriously, when were you fully staffed and how long did that status maintain? Yeah, you had 8 people in the classroom, not one of them could answer the phone. Okay, you're fully staffed. Except that it takes about a year to replace people who resign. Maybe they're under the headset in 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. But when are they gonna be really proficient? When do they reach their competency levels?
After we're done hazing them.
Absolutely, that's the best part. That's why we want them on the floor. And when you finish, let's see, start a recruitment process immediately, you're already months behind. Hate to tell you that. I may be wrong. And when you finish the recruitment process, start immediately. Get ready. Just have that conversation with your HR person. Hey, you know what, we don't need anybody right now, but we want to review the job description, make sure it's right. We want to make sure we're going to know where it's going to be put, posted, listed, placed. We want to know the whole calendar. what it's gonna take. So that is management, that, from my perspective, in terms of having, onboarding people, having people around enough. So you know, I've been highlighting on other pages. Do you have any questions from that work? Any questions that I left undone? Do you have time to go through a sample test? This is a very recent test. When I signed up to, most recently, to take my ENP, I bought the sample test. And I thought they would just send it to me in the mail. I had to take it online. So, do I do that?
Yep.
I do that. I'm gonna do that. So this was in December. Practice exam. Very easy. If you need to get up and take a break, please do. We're just gonna go right on through these. So, and this is gonna diverge from hiring. This is the whole thing, technical, GIS, this is anything that you'll find. And when you're sitting in that cubicle taking those tests in the darker room with a little lamp, this is how they come to you. They don't come to you in sections, they're random. And if you and I sat down to take the test at the same time, I would get a different test than you would get. So it's computer randomized. So if we take the test, don't look at that. Okay. So which of the following describes a secondary PSAC? What is that? What is a secondary PSAC?
Calls transferred to those.
See?
Can we zoom into this?
Should be able to. There's a big, yeah, plus sign, there you go.
Here we go.
Yes. Receives 911 calls transferred from a primary PSAP. Nina has developed data exchange formats for customer record info, ALI and MSAG records, billing to ALI records, and GIS to MSAG records. Okay, work through it. You know it's not one of these. Which one is it not?
It's not C.
You're right, it's not C. Okay, so now we have A, B, and D. What's left?
It's not A.
You're right, it's not A. So you got a 50-50 chance here, or you can work through it. At this point when you're in the test, you could flag it and come back to it, because it might have it might be answered somewhere else within the test. Or you could say, oh, for crying out loud, it's half of a point. B or D?
B.
I think it's B. What do you think?
Correct.
It's B. Who got it right? We got 100% so far.
Sweet.
In a 911 system with more than one PSAP, what type of routing is used to automatically determine which PSAP should receive the 911 call? D. And why is that? You're right, but why?
Because there's more than one piece up.
Okay? And where, this is a sub-question, where is that selective routing being done?
At the selected router.
And where would you find it?
At the, I can't remember the name of it now. The carrier, or the phone company, but.
At the central office
Central
generally?
office.
Or the town? Yeah, okay.
Isn't that a bit of a trick question, because if the SRDB goes down, it's gonna switch to default.
Right.
Oh, thanks, now we have to start
But it
all
says-
over.
But it says automatically.
He's so smart, that's why he's the research director guy. All right, which of the following laws prohibits discrimination against individuals on the basis of physical or mental impairment?
But Daryl, to that question, wouldn't that SRDB only be applying to a wireless call? Because it doesn't distinguish if that's wireless or landline in that question.
Right.
So,
The SRDB uses both.
Yeah, SRDB's for both wireless and wireline.
Right.
okay. I was thinking,
50-50.
There you go.
But if everything's working, it's D.
Let's say everything's working.
Let's just assume it's all working.
Let is working, because it's bulletproof. Which of the following laws prohibit discrimination against individuals based on physical or mental impairment, which limits one or more major life functions?
A.
A.
That's not Canadian.
Unless they're
Unless-
wireless.
Or unless it's Robert, it could be B.
That's what I'm talking about.
Who's older? Who's older?
Actually, he is. He's actually older.
Which 911 system correctly routes customers served by the same central office to different PSAPs?
So again, it's the B, selective routing.
So it's not one of those, we're sure. Which one is it not? Would you agree it's not A?
It's not A.
It's not A.
It's not D.
D is in dog.
D is in dog.
D is in dog. So you got two, selective routing or alt routing.
But the alt routing is only in a case where you would need to change the route that it normally takes, so selective routing is what's left.
What do you think? Yeah, but you only got so many of those, man.
You save all your 0.5% for the end and you.
And the Canadian questions. I think it's selective routing based on all things working, right? You have roughly a minute per question as you work your way through. Doesn't sound like a lot, but some of these you're gonna click off right away, you're gonna know. What's that?
I said that sounds awful.
Sounds not enough? It's plenty of time, it'll be plenty of time.
You guys remember what the passing score is, right? 70%,
Oh, we're good.
200 question test, so
That's
that's,
a D in my high school.
So you can miss something.
Right on.
so, you can miss, they're half a point apiece. You can miss 30 points, that's 60 questions, so as you're going through there. You
Yeah.
can keep track,
Yeah.
okay?
There's one, maybe.
So
I kept a tally. It wasn't zero.
I have done that. I use the tally mark. Yep.
Yeah, this is a questionable one.
I'm up to 30 questionables.
And you have to assume in some that you were
You're
confident on the
Uh-huh.
problem.
Yep. How confident am I in the rest of them?
That's right.
Exactly right. NENA I2 requires that voice over IP 911 calls be delivered within the existing 911 infrastructure, delivered to PSAP admin lines, routed to the PSAP based on the location of the ISP, and routed only to PSAPs that have been modified to receive them.
I'd say A, but two PSAPs
Well, they don't need to be modified to receive them, it's not D.
Not D?
I don't think it's D.
I don't think it's D. I don't think it's C, because the ISP
Right.
could literally be in.
It should be anywhere, yeah, for
Yeah.
work, so it sounds like A.
What do you think, Darryl?
I think A is the only one that makes sense.
It is the only one that makes sense.
The other three, we know B's wrong,
Yeah.
because that was the CC rule years ago.
Yep, and it's still considered technically a 911 call. Unless the private switch provider has deployed a private switch alley application, 911 calls received from a PBX will display the caller's name and address, the PBX main number and address, the name and address of the telephone number of the caller, or the actual and origination point of the emergency.
B,
Why is that?
because we get calls from our hospital all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
What agency is it? What department or what customer?
Our hospital banner.
Our hospital,
Nursing home,
Good
Right.
Samaritans, nursing home.
Oh, okay.
Has 3 locations in the county.
State Farm, yeah.
Oh, I bet, yeah. So you have to verify that even though they're calling from, what was that address, 4900, blah, 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 blah.
Right, yeah.
And, okay, good. See, you know this stuff. You just have to, no
Think about it a
pressure,
little bit.
work your way through it. When's it acceptable for a TC to hang up on a caller? When the caller's rude, when it's a silent call, when the call is completed, and only when the call seems like a false alarm.
See.
What? Who said V? You need some test anxiety.
Do you know what, I actually worked for an organization that if a caller cussed at you on the line,
Yeah?
you were instructed to hang up on
Was that in trial?
them. No,
Wow.
I'm serious.
Was it a 911
It
call?
was a, it was a sheriff's office.
Oh,
my
that's
gosh.
awesome.
Yes. I
Wow.
know, that was 25 years ago, 26 years ago,
No kidding.
but yeah.
It directed at you in regards to cussing?
Yeah, yeah,
Well-
if they were cussing on the line, you were instructed to hang up on them.
What information is commonly displayed when a caller's telephone number is not located in the database? B. Anybody think other than B? B it is, right?
Yes.
What is the intended advantage of a PSAP consolidation, Jeff Coe? Sorry. What is the intended advantage of a PSAP consolidation?
C.
C.
Yeah, I think C.
Economies of scale.
Which of the following devices is used to translate bought-out tones into displayed characters? A, TDD. Are you guys using them still? Do you get calls on TDDs?
We don't get calls, but we use them.
Yeah, right on.
We have them.
Yeah, that's good. What is the single most important component of the emergency response system? B, and that's the human being. For wireless E911 Phase 1, regulations require telephone carriers to deliver information that identifies a wireless caller's.
C.
What do you think, Daryl?
That's correct.
Which of the following best defines crisis intervention? Mobilizing resources, diagnosing the problem, providing immediate and active involvement in the situation, and disseminating information to the media soon after the crisis occurs.
Not B.
What do we got?
I say C.
C? All those in favor, C? Motion carries. All right. If the media ask about the termination of an employee, which of the following is an appropriate action? Speak off the record, refer to human resources, refuse to answer the question, and assume the conversation is not being recorded.
B.
B.
Love HR.
That's right.
Media never records us.
They don't. Oh my
Especially
God.
off the record.
If a news reporter requests a recording of a 911 call, which of the following is most appropriate? Follow your policy, refer to the latest federal ruling on the subject, release the recording because 911 calls are public records, or refuse the request because emergency calls are covered by policy.
That's A.
A. And if you work with an organization that has a records custodian, turf that information to someone at the sheriff's department, for example. Maybe there's a communication / PIO person that handles these. Let's see, telecommunicators should interrogate a silent 911 call with TDD to determine if it's an abandoned call, the caller has a hearing loss, the caller is using a wireless telephone to make a 911 call, the caller is attempting to record an emergency using a special communication device.
Probably D.
Probably B.
B as in boy?
D is
D.
D is
Dog.
D.
All right.
Or an abandoned call, wouldn't A possibly be the,
Well, if they don't answer, then
where,
We do.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the law
abandoned,
to-
you get
so we run our TDD on all silent calls
Right. Okay.
to check to see if maybe they have a TDD device. I mean, ones the
We
most.
do have a few that,
Some of them we to get their attention. It's pretty.
Yeah,
Right,
they do.
from the pocket.
It's kind of like a, yeah, definitely. So what do we think?
I was gonna go with A, but
I think it's D.
Think it's D? All right.
going with D now.
Motion
Come on,
carries.
Robert, be different.
You guys know the difference between an abandoned call and a silent call, right?
Abandoned gives you that me.
Yeah, they hang up
yeah.
after you answer or before
What
you
do they do?
answer.
What is that noise again?
Yeah, how's that go again?
That was the same.
During which of the following employee behavior evaluated to determine the degrees of employees' effectiveness? Job analysis, work analysis, performance appraisal, time and motion study.
See,
Didn't that question come up earlier?
You put it in your.
Yeah, still gets the same answer. Which of the, you're not gonna see the same questions in your test. Which of the following is not a primary function of an emergency notification system? Recall personnel, deliver automatic crash notification, notify community of an Amber Alert, or not notify community of a pending emergency situation? B.
B.
B is correct. I think you're supposed to say what is B.
What is B?
Okay. Ergonomics for 200s. In the workplace, which refers to the ergonomics in the workplace refers to the following: brand of seating, study of workplace accidents, study of circadian rhythms, or the answer D, relationship. Oh, sorry.
You skipped 20, by the way.
I did. So read it.
It's okay.
Yeah, we're trying to compress time here. How much bar we got? Oh, we
You have 10 minutes.
Okay, we got bar. Somebody gave a really good answer on that one earlier. I liked it, still like it. Which of the following response best describe the ability or the need to verify how it displayed from a PBX call station? Telephone company PBX records only updated monthly. Address of PBX station may not be the same as the PBX central switch. Huh? Good. Which of the following is the most effective means of reducing bias in the performance evaluation process?
Oh, we did that one, yeah, see.
We did that one. What class of worker is covered under the Fair Labor's Standard Act?
B.
This has not changed in the last 30 minutes. Which of the following pieces of radio equipment receives a weak signal on one frequency and retransmits on another frequency at a higher signal strength?
C.
What is it?
Repeater.
Yeah, how's that work?
Picks something up and repeats it.
That's good. You need him writing policy. I don't care what he's doing now. When a job analysis is performed, the best source of information about what is actually done on a job is, what is A? And wireless enhanced 911 terminology, which of the following best describes the wireless carrier's equivalent of a CO? Central office. MSC.
Hey,
What?
Think that's right?
I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah?
The mobile positioning center is,
Which of the phone investors
I thought it was part of the, in G 911.
In the wireless
Well,
part or in?
It's, I think it's A,
I think it's A.
the switching, mobile switching center.
Okay, so here's a technical question that is probably the types of questions that raises the most stress. So again, work through it. So wireless enhanced 911 terminology, which of the following best describes the wireless carrier's equivalent of a central office? Is it D? We know it's not D. It's not D. So now we've limited it to these. Mobile positioning center. I never heard of one of those. I'd like to start a company that sells those, but I don't know how to do. Central control point? I don't think so. So again, we're just narrowing the choices down. Here's where you can take 2 minutes because the next question is going to take you 10 or 15 seconds to answer. So budget your time. If his supervisor states that athletes make the best TCs, which of the following is occurring? B, 10 seconds, done. So you've gained time that you took to get through 28. ACD systems can route incoming 911 calls according to, we're gonna say there's one answer here. I was gonna say, it's not A because the incoming, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is, right?
We don't know what their preference is either,
Exactly.
so it could be B, or,
Okay.
but technically you could do it on caller's cell phone number, but most likely it's the longest idle position.
Exactly, because you'll find ACDs, automatic call distribution systems in larger systems, or a place where someone's like, I ain't answering that call because I've answered 12 and you ain't answered.
That's the human ACD.
That's the, exactly. Oh, yeah. Which of the following describes the assignment of lat-long coordinates to tabular data? Dude. This is for you.
That's right.
Such that street addresses so that they can be displayed on points on a map. MSAG, geovalidating, address geocoding, and emergency service number assignment. What do you think? C? Okay, so I'm gonna stop here only because we've run out of time mostly. And two, I just wanna make sure that you know that there's this other document that's gonna come your way. And it's called Test Preparation Tips. And so you can, this is something you can read through once or twice. It's gonna be common sense for you. It will help you deal with any test anxiety that you may have. So, I can help you when you go through this material. My commitment to helping you get through this ENP test is my email address that's in the documents. I'm better on email, not so good on the phone, but I provided both. But I'm glad to help. I'd like to see everybody in the room who's taken the test pass it, and that would be a great measure of success, a good expenditure of our time today. So, any questions? What's itching? What's making you feel squeamish or sick or relaxed or you good? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. You know this stuff. You really do. Just
Thank
take
you.
your time.
Thank you, Carl.
You bet.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks for that time. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, I thought you were gonna
Okay, to give you guys an update on where we're at, we have 2 sessions left. Monica Million will be teaching the next session on March 5th, and you and I will have to talk about scheduling the last one.
What's that?
Be quieter next time.
Oh.
And I will send these documents out over the